Hi, my name is Andrew Eldridge, and I am honored to select the All-State Percussion Etudes for this year's Texas Music Educators Association. I chose Etude 24 from the Advanced Snare Drum Studies book by Mitchell Peters. When combing the available books, I found this etude contained a great balance of rhythmic accuracy challenges, roll lengths for both tied and untied rolls, and embellishment figures from flams to drags and four-stroke roughs. Of course, the most important thing to focus on, regardless of your instrument, is the sound quality. Avoid overplaying the instrument with harsh downstrokes. The drum and stick should both resonate for the fullest sound possible. You want to be the best rhythmician you can possibly be. Learn to execute the correct rhythms at a slow tempo and with a metronome. Use the metronome as a tool, not a crutch. I encourage you to implement metronome games, such as putting the click on the upbeat or on every other beat to help foster confidence in your own internal pulse. There are times where it is easier to subdivide and feel the meter in 10/8 versus the written 5/4. We can often make music feel more relaxed, though, by sticking to the larger pulse and just thinking about the smaller pulse within it. Choose a drum that will help you achieve the sound that you want. I recommend either a standard 5x14 inch drum or a more shallow 4x14. Be mindful that the smaller drum you have, you may overplay the louder dynamics. For this, I prefer a brighter sounding brass drum rather than one with a wood shell. And I am personally using a Black Swamp Percussion 5x14 inch multiphonic brass drum with a Tom Freer mesh snare muffler. Ensure the drum is tuned well. I find it is best to be pitch critical at least once a week when you are in the practice phase. Then clearing the head before any big performance. If budget allows to buy a new head, change the head a few days in advance of the performance to allow time for the head to seat on the shell. Your snare stick should also reflect your preferences on the drum. Make sure they are both the same pitch, free of any cracks or large dents, and straight. I personally highly recommend replacing your sticks at least once a semester because the moisture from your hands will warp the stick over time. I like a stick that feels quick on the drum head with a longer taper because of my drum set background. My daily driver for almost all concert snare playing is the Vic Firth Jake Nissley signature stick from the Symphonic collection. Clarify your stickings and write them in the music. I call these landmark stickings. Landmarks help you feel comfortable as you pass them. They are familiar territory and give you points of reference inside the music. In general, close your flams down just a bit more than you think. In my experience, young students tend to play concert flams way too open. Listen for a sound that just slightly thickens the primary note. With multiple note embellishments, aim to clearly play the written number of drags. Drags should have 2 notes in the grace notes, while 4-stroke roughs will have 3 notes. Avoid playing a buzz stroke in place of the graces. I like to have more air inside the buzz. Buzz strokes are often played with too much pressure into the head. This changes the tone of the drum and stroke because the stick is in contact with the head just a little bit longer. Clarify your roll skeletons and write them in your music. Not every roll should be played with the same skeleton, especially considering phrasing or dynamics. I also tend to play with changing roll bases during changes of dynamics. More on this later. Mind the gap. 2 measures with an opening statement include extra rests between phrases. In my experience teaching this etude, Students often miscount the rests in measure 3 and measure 7. Younger players may find it helpful to put an internalized vocal in place of the rests to aid in the correct spacing. Navigate these spaces carefully. Remember that silence is just as important and beautiful as sound. I found sextuplets to be my most preferred roll skeleton, but that may change based on the needs of the phrasing. This is all tied completely to how comfortable you are with playing a smooth roll. If you find it difficult to play with a slightly open buzz quality, you may need to experiment with a faster roll skeleton. For example, I maintain a sextuplet roll bass from the beginning until measure 12, where I play with a 32nd note roll bass on the 8ths and beats 1 and 2, a fast triplet roll bass on the triplets and beats 3 through 4, and back to a 32nd note roll bass on the 16th notes. That also applies to the rolls in measures 19 through 20 and the short triplet roll found in measure 28. The two forte piano rolls in measure 13 and 27 experiment with a changing roll bass. For example, I start my measure 13 forte piano with a 5-lit, 3/16 triplets, and finish with a 32nd notes to end the roll on the same hand. The change in hand speeds will help add energy to the end of the crescendo. In measures 24 through 25, avoid playing the short 16th rolls as open diddles or as a buzz with one hand. I highly recommend turning these into compressed 5-stroke rolls using 32nd notes as your roll bass. I switch back to a 16th triplet bass during the longer 8th and quarter note rolls. There are 3 measures with unconnected rolls: measure 6, measure 26, and measure 31. To play these, end the untied rolls with a slight buzz release. More specifically, in measure 6, play with a sextuplet roll bass, buzz release the downbeat note, then play remaining triplets with the opposite hand. In measure 26, play with a compressed 4-lit interpretation for each unconnected roll. And in measure 31, play 7 notes in a sextuplet speed. Use the concept of landmark stickings that I mentioned earlier to assist you with the fun rhythmic challenges in measure 14, measure 17 through 18, and measure 30. For example, I wrote in an L in my music on beat 2 of measure 14 to help me target that specific hand on beat 2. Make sure to feel the rhythm changes in your wrists during these tricky measures. If I may, here are a few mindset tips that have helped my students and me through the preparation for any big performance. Your mindset can seriously change everything about your performance. Henry Ford once said, "Whether you think you can or can't, you're absolutely right." Find ways to focus on the musical details while performing. Practice keeping stray thoughts from going through your mind while in the performance flow. Also focus on creating productive systems, not just goals. You are better served if you have a plan in place for developing a good sounding buzz roll versus mastering the specific rolls in this etude. And lastly, learn to enjoy the process. We spend so much time in the preparation phase, but choose how we feel about music after a single performance. Our fulfillment should come from a positive relationship with the drum inside the practice room. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial over the 2024-2025 Texas Music Educators Association All-State Snare Drum Etude. I sincerely hope you have fun working on this etude, and If you are auditioning for Allstate this year, I hope you have a great performance and enjoy the ride.